Welcome to my new channel, straight from the basement, where I upload videos about miniatures and miniature adjacent topics. Less scripted, less edited, more stream of consciousness type content. And all of that Austrian style, from the underground, because basements is what we do best. I watched the Adepticon release video, and I gotta say, I was kinda underwhelmed by the things that I care for, and I was kind of hyped by something I don't care for at all. But let's go through it one by one. They did drop the awkward pre-recorded format for this presentation and did it live again, which felt a lot more natural and personal. And personal it was. I almost wanted to go and give Alex a hug and pat him on the back when I saw him this sad about Yarick being gone.
Yarick is, as far as the Imperium is concerned, deceased. There was a great memorial for him.
We're all feeling it, buddy. We're all feeling it. The previews started off with Wood Elves, and I'll admit, if there's anything I do not care about in Warhammer, then that's fantasy elves. And even less so, fantasy elves of the wooden ilk. I gotta say though, seeing Orion, King of the Woods, was a nice flashback to the early 2000s when this guy would show up in every Golden Demon. And some people did some really amazing versions and kit bashes of this mini. Beastmen were another trip down memory lane for me. When they came out, I even bought an army set. Ultimately, I was more amazed by the art in the army book though. The art by Adrian Smith and Karl Kopinski heavily featured in there, and their work was what really defined the worlds of Warhammer for me and was what got me hooked on the universe. Karl is going through a bit of a rough time right now, and I made a video about that. Please find it linked in the description if you would like to help. As for the Beastmen, I only ever painted 5 of them though, after heavily converting them for a Golden Demon entry. The sculpts of the bodies do not hold up at all today with their almost comical, blocky muscles, only rivaled by the old Cathay. And even back then, what must have been 2005, I felt compelled to spend 100 hours on completely resculpting all of them. There is a new mini that comes with this box, you can see it here on screen, but I almost prefer the spirit he comes with. It's a really characterful little critter. I love it. So Elves and Beastmen, we already knew this was coming. Nothing special. The next thing they introduced though blew everyone's socks off. They finally revealed Grand Cathay, which is a typical gnarly 120-year-old cafe here in Vienna, where moody waiters scoff at you for simply looking at them. Okay. Grand Cathay is a faction that has been mentioned as far back as 4th edition, if I'm not mistaken, and has been introduced to a wider audience as a playable faction in Total War Warhammer 3. They're the biggest faction of humans located in the Far East, and they're ruled over by immortal dragons that existed on this plane even before the old ones arrived. Some people have waited 20 years or longer for a release like this, so this is serious business. And oh boy, does this faction look amazing. The Games Workshop leaned fully into all the Far East culture they could find. Architecture, lanterns, clothing, symbols, dragons, down to the terracotta warriors. Everything straight up yoinked from mainly Chinese real-world sources. But that's not a bad thing. There's a lot of tabletop games that did this before, and this being a brand new faction, we do get a ton of new models, and I fully expect to see a lot of these to show up in the next few Golden Demons. The old world category will be full of these. This is what we get if a design team has the freedom to dive into something completely new that is not framed by 30 years of canonic baggage like 40k for example. We do kind of get a plethora of plumes again, but I can forgive that when I look at how they did the cloth parts on pretty much all of these models. On the Jade Warriors, all of these folds look gorgeous and it makes them super interesting to paint. The way that the dragons are detailed on this shield looks like they took a real one and shrunk it down with the angled way the dragon bodies curve. I love it. And finally, some non-Caucasian faces. I'm thinking of yoinking them along with a few bits for some white scars conversions. The Jade Lancers, especially the horses, their armor and the wiggly detail on them look great. I kind of like how they kept the vibe of the typical old Warhammer fantasy horse while making them a lot more dynamic. Also, I feel like every Cities of Sigmar player will at least think about getting these basic troops, because both the foot soldiers and the cavalry look significantly better and a lot more interesting than their own troops. Also, they are made in plastic, which means you can convert them more easily. And the Chinese theme always has a particular draw. For the rocket launchers, they straight up used fireworks as ammunition. The cannons are giant dragon mouths and the crews are clad in these fancy dresses again that makes me want to paint them right away. And I also adore the ogre holding a barrel or a stone cannonball. That's an ogre that you could use for a City of Sigma army. The real kicker is the Sky Lantern though. The thing is huge. When I first saw it, I thought this was photoshopped. And I will admit, I never want to assemble this. It will be a nightmare. But I guess you can do some cool patterns on these large surfaces that will make it truly an eye-catcher. I just know that I will definitely never get to that stage because I would never be able to finish assembling one. The Lord Magistrate looks like a great model in itself. I'd love to paint that or maybe use it in a diorama or maybe some kind of Golden Demon entry where he stands in front of some war council table full of maps. And if you thought this was grandiose, then you haven't seen the Terracotta Warriors yet. The Sentinels are just so out of left field, and I wager you can paint this up in many different ways to make them stand out. You could go the same Red Earth Terracotta route Games Workshop did. You could make them look like different other stone versions, or paint them a bronze color and drown them in verdigris, or drown them in verdigris and then dry brush the edges bronze. Or you could do a head swap and turn them into really unique giants. You could just use 4 of them in your Sons of Behemoth army. Look at him and how he's standing there in the shot with the yellow background. You don't know if that's a miniature or an actual giant. Now, I'm not a fan of this dragon head, but these spirit longmaws are perfect for when you want to put a character on a smaller dragon body. And speaking of dragon bodies, as if this army didn't have enough centerpiece minis already, we get this huge detailed serpent-bodied mythical creature. Miao Ying also comes with a gorgeous human form. And next up, and now we got a little trailer that showed a lot of shadow and not much else, but it turns out we finally get a Tyranid kill team, which sounds exciting. But as much as I try to get into kill team, something that always bugged me about it is that you are practically running around with clones that have slightly different loadouts. And I don't really enjoy that. Every skirmish game I played before had miniatures that all felt coherent, but were significantly different. A bunch of little guys and then one big hitter, or some ranged attackers supported by fast melee troops. And I don't quite get that from kill team. If you want to play Space Marines, you have to play an all-scouts team or an all-intercessors team. You get the idea. And here it's just the same. We get 5 Raveners. I got my hopes up a little when I saw Hormagaunts in the mix, but these are basically just NPCs for a new narrative campaign style play mode. Now, don't get me wrong, they do look okay. I would definitely paint up the Fell Talon, for example, just to have fun with the sculpt and the pose. But some of them look kind of silly, like the Tremor Scythe with the extensions on his head, or the Wrecker with the hunchback. And I gotta say, for me the fantasy just doesn't work. Like sure, Space Marine scouts would choose different loadouts for different missions, but how does this work here? Does a Ravager just get up in the morning, check his to-do list and think, which mutation do I have to grow to get this one done? And the second half of the box is an Adeptus Mechanicus team. And I would wager this is a kill team that a lot of people have been waiting for, just because it's such a popular faction. You get a techno-archaeologist and a servitor underseer, with the latter one being especially looking like every other mechanical model ever. And then on top of that, a bunch of servitors that you can configure to your needs. Now this has a sliver of the flavor that I mentioned before, where there is at least 2 guys that look different. But then if you have like 8 servitors that look really similar along with that, we kind of are back to square one. One thing I thought about was to convert them to a Dark Mechanicum team. I feel like you could turn each of these servitors into a different abomination. Maybe one of them has spider legs, another one could roll around on a pair of tracks, and yet another one might have his head replaced with some type of screen or analyzer. You get the idea. Next, we got to see a new intro box for Spearhead, and I think if Spearhead is your jam, you'll get a lot out of this box. There is some Crypt of Blood terrain in there from the Warcry starter set. I just love that bust. And this is great for onboarding new players into Age of Sigmar. And then they introduced a few more Spirit boxes, and this is where I skip ahead because there's no new models in these. They even recycled an Underworld's Warband in the Seraphim box. Then we got to see the upcoming 40k army box releases for Chaos. And boy, I got a lot to say about these. First we have the World Eaters, and they showed us this brand new Khorne character model, the Slaughterbound. He's so angry he can scream dead models back to life. I imagine him a bit like Gunnery Sergeant Hartman.
You little scumbag! You are not allowed to die without permission! Now get up! Get on your feet!
And looking at him in that first shot they gave us, I really liked it, and that means a lot coming from me, because I don't like Chaos to begin with their cluttery detail. And the Khorne theme, half-naked muscle-packed barbarian dudes, is just a trope that has been overdone in this industry. Like every startup that wanted to sell minis went for the Conan-style hero type because it sells. And I'm just desensitized being exposed to it for 25 years. But this guy has something to him. And you better prepare for some inside baseball here right now. I guess it's probably the way he is textured. You know, I often go on about, besides all its difficulties, traditional sculpting had all of these idiosyncrasies and flair that digital sculpting could never recreate, at least not yet. Especially organic shapes are really hard to pull off in a credible way. And the Slaughter Lord kind of has that flair you would get from metal or resin minis. Like all the textures do look organic and not as stiff as digital often looks. Especially the arms and their shapes and their textures stand out to me in this context. The rest is all models we already know, and that's a bit of a letdown in the year of chaos. And next up we got a glimpse of Death Guard. And again, the only thing new we see is the Lord of Poxes that I already drooled over in my Slaanesh video. A really cool model, the miasmic engine and the great plague blade on his back. I really would love to paint it, but that will have to wait until they release him as a single model for $50. Because I'm not getting this box for just one model. The most baffling thing though out of these 40k previews came from the next segment, where they introduced the Thousand Suns box. The Seketar robots, I have so many questions, the most burning one probably being, why? They get some sort of stealth mode that, and I quote, lets them remain hidden in advantageous positions before opening up with arcane weapons and hellfire missiles. So I gotta ask myself where these arcane weapons are, because all I see is more of the same. I guess if arcane is referring to how the weapons looked in the old metal Chaos Space Marines, then I can see that. But lore-wise, the only thing they remind me of is Mechanicum, like the Robocop domes beneath the Siege-themed idols. But maybe that was the idea behind these. They just look too generic in my opinion, like any other walker or walker construct in the 40k universe. Especially in the back view, I guess I would have just preferred a different design idea for these. I appreciate that they tried to do something new, but I don't know, ultimately it just doesn't feel new enough. And again, the rest of the box is already existing models. And I don't know what to make of this. If the Champions of Slaanesh release that felt like they deleted half a faction more than releasing a new one is the example all of these factions will follow, then I'm afraid not seeing exciting new miniatures now will be the least of our problems. But we'll see. The books and boxes they come with look fantastic. Of course, this creates some extra FOMO, so I'm expecting these to sell quickly regardless of the fact that there's not much new stuff in these as far as miniatures goes. But I'll admit, these look gorgeous. Starting with the way they open, finally we do get some artwork that won't be bent and dinged by the plastic sprues, the collectible medallion. Each of these boxes will contain 1/4 of them, so of course you will want all 4. But you gotta be quick, there will only be 1,600 of each made, and 200 of them will go to influencers, and the rest will of course be bought by scalpers. Oh, and Grey Knights still look the same. Or do they? Well, they get the Baby Carrier 2.0 with bigger guns, more icons, and a giant club or flail so he can smash. And why is that important? Well, we get a new Crusade, which is Games Workshop's name for narrative campaigns, where you can join a side, play games, and then submit your results, and then either a planet blows up or not. Fighting returns to the planet Armageddon, because why not? After all, there's only about 3 billion planets in the universe to choose from. And you'll be able to stand with the Chaos Filth or the other unwashed Astartes kind. And that's right, Space Wolves get involved, and they arrive with more new kits than all of the 3 Chaos factions we just saw before combined. And this is truly the year of Chaos. In the upcoming Space Wolves army set, we get a new Wolf Priest, a new Battle Leader, a new unit called Head Takers, and Blood Claws as well as Grey Hunters get a redesign. And I kinda like it, although I gotta say, I sense a little Space Marine fatigue inside me. Like if you showed me this one 3 years ago, I'd be, fuck yeah, let's go. And now I kinda think, neat. Like, don't get me wrong, this is an amazing kit. The dynamic pose, shield held out in front of him, tactical rock, okay, did we need that one? It's not like his stance isn't already dramatic enough. The helmet version looking even more badass in my opinion than the bareheaded one. This shot could be straight from a Codex cover. Maybe it's just me, but I just wish Space Marines wasn't their bestseller. Then we would get a lot more shiny new things for other factions too. And if we look at the roadmap, that's Black Templars next, who already got a pretty solid release. Was it 2 years ago? Do we really have to put more work into it? And on the horizon we have even more Space Marines. Not the most exciting times we live in, and I'm a Space Marine fan. I get the same feeling from these Blood Claws and the Grey Hunters that I got from the Blood Angels army set. Like you could probably build this from a standard Space Marine box and then use an upgrade sprue. And that's probably not even wrong if I look at some of these poses. They just look familiar. If you just showed me these pictures, I think I wouldn't even have noticed that these were new models to begin with. I guess there's only so many poses you can do, but still. The hit takers dialed it up a notch, although I don't like the wolves, and in general I don't like how James Workshop sculpts fur, but I guess this works well with the wash and dry brush approach, and it's very beginner friendly. Really well sculpted fur can be frustrating to paint. We only get 3 of these, I guess for the sake of also including the additional wolves in the box, and I really like the round shields. That's going to offer some great possibilities for kit bashing. The poses are fine, especially this one with the little fur coat, very dramatic, and I'm sure I might be using this one for some sort of conversion. Maybe get rid of the fur and turn him into an Alpha Legion guy that just uncloaks from being disguised as a Dark Angel or something. The same goes for the Wolf Priests, a lot of head options. I really like the old man face here, gives me some Braveheart vibes. The sculpt is solid, everything is rather tactical with a little wolf flavor on top, and everything becomes a lot more mysterious wearing a hood. Maybe everything is just a little too perfect and clean. When I look at him in a stylish duster, I think of these AI generated videos of these perfect human beings with shoulders like a closet and 13 fingers, walking down a catwalk showing off 1900s haute couture, which is when fur coats were all the rage and funk music playing in the background. Again, they're all amazing kits. Games Workshop really has their craft dialed in when it comes to quality. But I don't know when Space Marines last have left me with excitement. I guess if you just get too much of a good thing, it becomes more like a given thing. Games Workshop to me feels a little stretched thin, releasing too much at once, which results in a lot of generic stuff and a lot of it feels interchangeable. None of these 40k releases has seen something truly outstanding or surprising. The theme seems to be a lot of boxes with a single new model or a slight tweak to an existing model in the case of Grey Knights. Not much has been announced for Age of Sigmar, while the old world gets a whole new faction. The fantasy is divided into the new mortal realms and the old world, and I can only imagine that this cannibalizes resources from the design team maybe. All in all, even though I enjoyed that they went back to the old presentation format, except for the Grand Cathay reveal, I think we unfortunately didn't get a lot of substance here. So what do you think about this lot they showed us and the implications? Do you concur with my assessment or do you completely disagree? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching and bye for now.